Welcome back, Warriors, to another blood-soaked round of the worst fighting game. My never-ending quest to pit button bashers against each other in a pointless attempt to crown the stinkiest of them all. Last time, we dredged up one of the SNES's poorest efforts with Battle Blaze, a game so bland and boring that I'm falling asleep just thinking about it. Anyway, with that said, I think it's about time to throw Sega back into our fighting pit, and specifically with one of the 4 fighting games ever released for their ill-fated Genesis add-on/tumor, the 32X, a peripheral that can only be described as smaller than life. And not only is this week's contender, Cosmic Carnage, one of the platform's few fighters, it also happens to be the only all-original one specifically designed for it, which I guess is some sort of distinction? Nah, it's not. Now, this has been a pretty frequent request from many of you over the years, and until just recently, I was always like, it looks okay, cool character designs, lots of blood. How could this be bad? Let's find out as we get Cosmic Carnage in the ring! Now, whenever you're dealing with the cosmos and deep space, you gotta account for the long journeys, what with all the light years and hypersleep and stuff. So you gotta make sure that you'll be properly rested, and really, you can't ask for a better night's sleep than laying on a comfortable, supportive Titan mattress, who also happens to be sponsoring today's video. I've had my own for a few months now. I went with the Titan Plus Luxe model for its medium firmness level, but also threw a plush pillow top on there. You gotta treat yourself sometimes. And I've gotten more shut-eye than I've ever had before. Good quality sleep is always a big help if I find myself fending off a weird alien warrior the next day, or have to review a bunch of less than stellar fighting games. Fortunately though, with Titan's limited lifetime warranty and 120-night sleep trial, I can rest easily knowing that at the end of the day, I'll have a quality product to come home to and recharge on after battle. So if you're also looking to get the same quality sleep, check out titanmattress.com/McMuscles and get 30% off your order with the code McMuscles. Scan the QR code on your screen, or click the links in the description or pinned comment below. And best of all, your Titan mattress ships straight to your door in a futuristic vacuum-sealed box. And of course, the shipping is absolutely free. So check those links below if you're interested, and thanks once again to Titan for sponsoring today's episode of The Worst Fighting Game. Now, without further ado, let's commence the Cosmic Carnage. I think no one will really argue against the undeniable fact that the Sega 32X has one of the worst libraries of any game console, ever. Only 40 titles were released for it, and outside of, say, the first Virtua Fighter or Knuckles Chaotix, the vast majority were just ports of already existing 16-bit games, with very few of them actually playing or looking any better. Cosmic Carnage is one of the rare instances of an all-original product, and woof, is it ever original. In fact, I think this might be one of the weirdest, most ass-backwards fighters I've ever played, and it all came from the unhinged minds over at the Almanac Corporation. Now, if you've never heard of the Almanac Corporation, I'm not surprised, because shortly after the release of Cosmic Carnage, they changed the name of their entire studio, coincidentally enough, to Gyvro in 1995. Anyway, several of their main staffers had originally come from Technos, and in the lead up to the event horizon that was Cosmic Carnage, they did develop some other notable titles. These include the original Super Famicom version of River City Girls, as well as the underrated actioner Mazen Saga Mutant Fighter for the Genesis. So clearly, they were no fly-by-night studio, but obviously developing a full-fledged fighting game from the ground up on the unwieldy and weak 32X hardware would have been a tall order for anyone. Now, there's not much out there in terms of its actual day-to-day development, but it is interesting that Cosmic Carnage was released as Cyber Brawl in Japan and was pretty different in one key area, and not exactly the one you'd think. The game was designed to be violent no matter what territory is going to be released in, as there's finishing moves and plenty of blood throughout. But it was decided to slightly alter the Western versions to make sure the release didn't get blocked or censored. In Cyber Brawl, there are 3 characters that are very anime and human being inspired, while the rest of the cast is just a bunch of aliens and mutants. So, to better the game's chances of not running into any ratings issues, it was decided to swap out the faces and names of those human characters so everyone would be a weirdo. As I guess weirdo on weirdo violence was a lot more palatable in the early 90s. Regardless, it was a largely ignored game wherever you played it, as the likes of Super Street Fighter 2, Primal Rage, Virtua Fighter, Killer Instinct, and Mortal Kombat 2 ruled in both the arcades and at home. And when your game could only be played on the 32X, a peripheral that didn't even last a full year, your ability to make any sort of impact was minimal at best. Review-wise, it actually ran the gamut, with high scores from the likes of Game Fan magazine, but very low scores from EGM, which I guess I can kinda understand. When you first boot up Cosmic Carnage, it's easy to be wowed by the colorful character designs, the space theme, and the violence. But if you dug into it just a bit below the surface, you would have discovered it's one of the most unbalanced, strange, and broken fighting games you'll ever see. Oh, speaking of how it looks, right off the space bat, Cosmic Carnage does have some of the better looking visuals on the 32X. Not exactly high praise, but I think looking at the character sprites, it's a fair statement. Unfortunately, as cool as this motley cast of space creatures looks, the same can't really be said about the backgrounds, because when you think about the infinite possibilities afforded by taking place in the wide cosmos, a bunch of flat, boring environments aren't exactly inspiring. There is a story reason for this though, and it's kind of bizarre in the fact that it's not based on the typical scenario you'd see in any other spacefaring sci-fi tournament fighter. Unlike, say, Galaxy Fight Xenophage or Slaughter Sport, where there's this light-spanning contest to prove who's the best of the best, Cosmic Carnage is about 2 different spaceships crashing into each other, leaving only 8 survivors, with the goal to defeat all the others in a mad dash to get to the only escape shuttle. Now, I'll give points to originality, but this unique scenario does mean it limits where all the fighting can take place, so I'm not sure it was a net positive. There are like 1 or 2 stages that seem neat, but when compared to the wild and crazy sprite scaling you can see on the fighters themselves, it's a shame that that same imagination wasn't applied to the whole game. And as stated before, the anime characters who seem to be wearing biosuits in the Japanese version had their heads swapped out, so now there's a bug guy, a fire being, and a ninja named Naruto.
Believe it!
Anyway, the rest of the roster is filled out by some sort of bio-metallic soldier, an intergalactic ghost rider, a space ape, a mecha snake woman, and finally, a literal xenomorph. Now, I've seen way worse lineups in the many games we've had in this ring before, so it's an area where Cosmic Carnage does excel at, with the only real disappointment being that there's no end boss or secret characters of any type. I could only imagine what kind of depraved pixel-based monstrosity they could have come up with for a game like this, but sadly, we'll never know. Like, give me a Pizza the Hut or something! That brings me to another, nay, the most important part for any fighting game, which is the arcade mode ending. And yes, you can earn one, but there's quite a few caveats to it. The first being that generally there's only 1 or 2 outcomes you can possibly achieve, and none of them involve learning anything about your chosen space weirdo. So whether you select the bug guy or a xenomorph, there's no individual endings or even some text to state what you did after your big escape. Now, I get that this was more of a common thing in the earlier days of fighting games, like 1987 to 1992 maybe, but this game was released in '94, where part of the appeal of fighting games was learning something about your favorite warrior. Like, did the super hot mecha snake lady return to her home planet and become its ruler? Yeah, no, there's none of that. The other caveat is the one or two possible endings I mentioned earlier, which is in regards to there being a bad one and a good one. In the latter, you make it to the escape shuttle and escape. It says congratulations and welcome tomorrow, and then the end credits. The bad ending is almost identical. You make it to the space shuttle, a timer counts down, but the liftoff sequence takes so long that the bigger ship you're escaping from blows up anyway. Why does this happen? Because you took too long to finish the game. So even if you're a few seconds over the invisible time limit, you still get bad end. The game doesn't even tell you this anywhere, not even in the instruction manual. Like, I would get it if this was some sort of extra time attack mode, but no, this is the only way to play against the CPU, so it's just a cheap way to get you to replay it. Like what kind of sick designed it this way? Speaking of sick fucks, I do have to give it up to the pixel artist who worked on the Carnage for Cosmic Carnage, as it is pretty visceral and does add some flourish to the presentation. Now, the animation itself is a bit weird. You can tell it wasn't done the same way as Street Fighter or Fatal Fury, because here it's very floaty, where sprite elements are overlaid on top of each other, sort of like balls, if you remember that one. Oh, I do, because I covered it before. The music is fine, it's serviceable, but the lack of any sort of voice samples really hurts the game's presentation overall. There's no real grunts or character voices of any type that I heard, not even an announcer. I mean, come on, Cosmic Carnage, give me something. Going back to the animation system though, well, it's more than just looks, because not only does it play into how the game feels, but how it plays even more directly into the... If you were to just look at raw Cosmic Carnage gameplay, you might not notice any immediate differences that set it apart from its contemporaries, but believe you me, there are. You just need to dig into the oozy alien flesh to get at it. First off, when selecting your fighter, a choice will pop up on the screen that lets you select individual armor pieces. Wait, what? Huh? Well, what's all this then? Well, this is the only real staple gameplay element that's unique to this Intergalactic incident, and in this particular system, it doesn't work like how any sane person would assume it does. In each slot, there's legs, arms, and body, and that lets you swap in between two different styles of weights for each armor piece: heavy, light, or defaulting to nothing at all. Ugh. Now, I'm sure those of you not familiar with Cosmic Carnage, which should actually be most of you, would incorrectly assume that each armor piece gives you protection for that particular body part. So if you get hit in the chest, you take less damage. Same goes for low hitting attacks to the legs, etc., etc. And yeah, it does do that stuff, but that's not the main point of it, as the armor's true functionality is to grant you completely different sets of special moves, and I mean like a lot of them. In between both armor sets you can swap between, there's 9 different specials for each character, and although you don't have access to them all at once, you can set your loadouts between each match. This shakes out to being a weird mix between Mortal Kombat X and Injustice 2, maybe? I don't know for sure in regards to that last point. I never played more than an hour of Injustice 2.
The trash talk never stops, dude.
Now, in that breakdown I just summarized for you, I intentionally slipped in a giant lie. Can you guess exactly where? Yep, there you are. This pretty significant mechanic doesn't apply to the entire roster. In fact, only half of them can take advantage of it, so characters like Yug, Damon, Naja, and Talmac only get 3 to 4 specials each against the other half's 9, cause screw them, I guess. So yeah, this decision is just like, what were they thinking here? Why design a system for only half the game? To me, personally, this oversight just smacks of running out of time, but it also might just be the unhinged nature of the Almanac Corporation, as they do try to justify it somewhat by saying that the soldier characters need these armor sets, while the more alien ones do not. Now, there are some slight disadvantages to armor, like losing a particular special move that's associated with that piece if it gets knocked off, but to me, the positives more than outweigh the negatives. That's not it for all the weird mechanics though. Some characters have game-changing options exclusive to only them, like Naruto here. He has insane mobility thanks to all these crazy dashes that nobody else has. So he can zip around the screen even in midair like he's playing Guilty Gear while everyone else is playing, I don't know, Human Killing Machine. Another character, Tyre, has a defensive dodge special that negates all attacks and even grabs. What's more is that he can just do it whenever he wants. And what's even more than that is that he can cancel out of it into any special move. Like, what the hell? Then there's the button inputs. These are a bizarre mishmash for most of the attacks roster-wide, as there's a few standard quarter or half-circle motions, but then there's unintuitive primal rage bullshit like tapping back, down, then up, or back, forward, punch, and kick, but then kick has to be pressed slightly after punch. Again, they're just being different just to be different and not because it makes the game play any better. Fatalities are performed by just finishing an opponent off with a special attack. As long as it's not blocked, they'll be chopped in two, get decapitated along with a few other effects. It's nothing revolutionary, but it gets the bloody job done. Character heights and weights also affect things too. Some fighters can get juggled by certain attacks while others can't because they hit the floor faster than the rest. So there's absolutely no consistency across anything really. I will say though that all this stuff does at least save Cosmic Carnage from being like a boring game, but it also feels really unfair as a result, as some characters have such monumentally bad matchups against others that it feels pointless to even try to fight some, especially if you're also working against the arcade ladder's strict-ass time limit. There's even more weirdo stuff buried in there, but you know, as bad as all that is, just wait until I get to the... Because of how the animation and sprites are designed, where everything is kind of floaty and segmented, Cosmic Carnage feels a bit off, which I think is illustrated pretty well if, you know, you look at it. It's not terrible, mind you, and I've played way more fighters that have felt way worse. But that's a descriptor just for the moment-to-moment gameplay, like the movement, blocking, or exchanging normal attacks. Things take a very, very drastic turn into Craptown when special moves are used, and worst of all, connect. Now, just to clarify here, this is not a bug, but a conscious design choice. Whenever a special move hits your opponent, the game slows down. Way down. To the point of the gameplay becoming ludicrous vaudeville. These moments of slowdown very quickly start ruining the pace of the gameplay, as they absolutely eat up any inputs you might be trying to perform while they're occurring, so they'll screw up any sort of comeback or strategy you might be attempting, as you can see in this recreation here. Dude, what the hell? It just dropped my inputs! You know when Tekken 7 or 8 goes into those slow motion exchanges? Yeah, that only triggers when you're both on critical health. But imagine if the game did that every time a special attack connected instead. That's what playing Cosmic Carnage is like. I get how they probably wanted these moments to look really impactful or cinematic, but instead of attaching it to special attacks, maybe, why didn't they just do it for supers or desperation moves? Those were fairly common by 1994, and they wouldn't happen too often in a given match, but yeah, I guess I shouldn't question the geniuses at the Almanac Corporation. But now we have to decide where Cosmic Carnage finally crash lands onto our tier list. So let's fill up the tanks with rocket fuel and turn this ship into a nosedive. There's a lot to dislike here, I can't lie to you. In terms of presentation, no end boss or secret characters. There's bad endings, a stupid time limit, bland backgrounds, and really lackluster music and sound effects. The mechanics, while kind of interesting, are just all over the place and incredibly unbalanced, making the whole thing frustrating to play against the CPU, and I assume against anyone you could fool into playing this with you. The slowdown, though, is perhaps the biggest issue, as it heavily negates any of the good qualities on display and makes what could have been an okay playing fighter way worse. With all that said though, the wild-looking fighter designs, gory finishers, and visually impressive sprites and scaling animation balance things out in a Cosmic Carnage, being fairly stinky. Looking at its contemporaries, it's much in the same vein as Bloodstorm or Pray for Death, but don't take that as any sort of compliment, Almanac Corporation. Phew. And there you have it. Another bloody battle has concluded in our fighting temple of terribleness. And once again, the sweaty aura of Pit Fighter still hangs in the air like a dark, digitized cloud. Someone will take you down one day, I swear. But in the meantime, though, let me know what other contenders you'd like to see in the comments below or over on my social media. Until then, Warriors, I'll see you next time on the worst fighting game.